Hey, y'all. I was worried for a second. Anyways, yeah, good morning. I'm so glad to be here with you. For real, I've been looking forward to hanging out with you this morning for a whole week now. And happy Father's Day. That seems to be the thing to say this morning, and rightly so. I'm a dad. I love being a dad. It is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Last night, my son broke out with a fever. He's fine. It wasn't a big deal. In the moment, it was a big deal for me. And there's just this scene. I wish there was a video camera and I could show it to you. I'm laying on the floor beside his bed, which is like this tall, and it looks like a boat. And I'm just laying there holding his hand, and it's 3:30 in the morning, and I knew that today would come, and it was gonna hurt like I'd been out doing stuff that I never should have been doing. But no, I'm just hanging out with my son, and every time he said one more song, that's what he got. Yeah, I mean, being a dad has been really great. I want to celebrate that. Really excited. Thanks for you dads who really try to do everything that you can to raise up your kids to love God with everything that they've got. But also, there's a funny thing about holidays. They always bring up a mix of emotions, right? Because not all of us had a great experience with our dads. And just out of respect for those of you who had an experience like that, I just felt that you deserved for that reality to be acknowledged. So I hope that today will be a day of peace and hope for you. Moving along, because there is no good segue out of that one, especially into the story that I'm getting ready to tell you. It's about asparagus soup. I just gave it away. So anyways, I wanted to start off this morning by creating some common ground, making sure that we all know that we're in this together, same boat, so to speak. So I guarantee that every single one of you this morning, if you took just a few moments and sifted through the archives of your memory banks, you would be able to come up with at least a handful of stories that would illustrate the times in your life where you have made a mess, right? You've made a mess, and it was messy, and you didn't like it, all right? Oftentimes, if you're like me, when you find yourself in a mess, especially one that you created with your own hands, an artesian mess, right? Then you want to get out of that mess. But if you're like me, you never really want to go about it the right way. It's usually a little too awkward. You usually have to have some difficult conversations, a few face-to-face, and I just rather not go there. And so I look for the loopholes and the shortcuts and the detours instead of fully addressing whatever the mess is in whatever given scenario. But then it just gets messier, right? We look for like the bed to sweep it under, or we look for, those little white lies, and sometimes we get away with it, but usually at the end of the day, whenever we try to fix one of these messes that we have made ourselves without fully engaging that mess, it just gets messier. If you don't believe me, here's a story for you. So this story does have to do with asparagus soup. And this asparagus soup was not any normal asparagus soup, if there is such a thing, because it was complicated, right? You know what I'm talking about, complicated? Sometimes situations are just complicated. It'd be easier to not really go into the details, You don't bring it up at the dinner table. Well, the reason that this asparagus soup was so complicated is that it was made by Nana, right? And she's so sweet. I don't think y'all like this story. Well, I do. And I have to hear myself tell it for the third time, so I don't care. So anyways, it was made by Nana, okay, by her own loving hands. And the thing is, like, to eat this thing, you needed like a fork and a knife. It was almost impenetrable. It was disgusting. And the smell encountered you, right? Even before you crossed through the threshold of her front door. And it was just, I knew that we were gonna have to eat it. I didn't like it. Plus, it was the middle of the summer, hot July day in North Carolina, asparagus soup in front of us. And, I was faced with a huge mess. And so, misery loves company, so my sister was there with me. And we were at the little kids' table, and the adults were at the adults' table. Side note, for any kids who are still at the kids' table, there's nothing good going on at the adults' table. Stay at the kids' table as long as you can, right? It's way more fun, okay? And so my sister and I were looking at each other, and we've each got this artifact in front of us that we don't know what to do with. Like, we can't ingest it. It's obvious that, no one has tipped off the FDA as to what was going on this little dinner table. And, it's like, what are we gonna do to get ourselves out of this mess? And I had a bright idea. I said, all right, I'm gonna take care of this. And my sister's like, well, how are you gonna do it? I was like, don't worry about it. It's complicated, okay? All right, so what I did was that I consolidated both of the soups into one bowl, and then I put it down on the floor, and just at the right angle so that no one could see me at the adult table, I went like kind of commando style through that card room, through Nana's bedroom, into Nana's bathroom, which is always kind of a forbidden thing, just because, I don't know, I'm not gonna go there. So anyways, I'm in Nana's bathroom, this place that I'd never wanted to go before, and I found what I was looking for. It was Nana's commode, all right? Because I was gonna get rid of this mess. And so I did what was most natural for any person to do. I dumped it in the toilet. And then I proceeded to flush it, right? Get rid of the evidence. Still enough residue on the bowl to be like, this is the best thing ever. Bless you, Nana, right? Now, hey, well, here's the problem. That's what I'm talking about. Here's the problem. Yeah. It didn't flush, right? It did not flush. And like the irony of ironies, like what didn't flush looked like something that like it was within context. You know what I'm saying? Right? And so it's like, oh man, like I had this mess. I tried to like fix it. I should have just owned up and been like, Nana, what the heck? Like this is gross. You shouldn't be eating this, right? No, but that's not what I did. I tried to flush it, get it away. Just got worse. And so like it's decision time, folks. Like there's a fork in the road. And I went left. I shut the lid and I got the heck out of there, right? And nobody said anything to this day. But last service was, broadcast all over the country, so we'll see what happens. I don't even care. It was like survival mechanism. But the deal is, right, that we all have, some story like that where we find ourselves in a mess and it's like, oh crap, like I can't believe like I did this. I can't believe this happened. I know that I made that decision, but like, sheesh, I did not expect these consequences. Like I've heard about things like that happening, but like I never thought I would find myself in this position. And I know that people say that all the time. Like, I never thought that I would be the one to do, but whatever, like I know that too, but still, I'm not even that guy, right? We can all relate to this, and sometimes it's funny, like asparagus soup. It was funny. Okay? Just good grief. I need to go up to, I'm gonna stop it. So anyways, like sometimes it's a funny situation, but also like sometimes it's just not. It's like pretty serious situations we find ourselves in. And we try to like get out of that mess. We don't really know what to do, and it just gets messier. And here's the deal, friends, like it's nothing to be ashamed of. Guess what? Like you're human. Welcome to the club. None of us are perfect. But it's not fun, is it? That's kind of what I want to talk about today. The right way to make asparagus soup, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to talk anymore about this stupid soup. There's something that I want for you to think about this morning. And I need you to bear with me because this concept is so, so important. If you're young, elementary school age, middle school age, going up into high school, college, if you're in a marriage or you've just gone through a separation, if you're a young professional and you're just trying to figure out the next season of life, if you're in more of those really sweet golden years, I don't care who you are. Like, A, this place is for you. This is where you belong. And B, I really need you to lean in and try to get a hold on this concept. Because a lot of people's futures depend on it. And I don't mean that to be scary or overly dramatic. But at the end of the day, it's the truth. First is this. Going back and thinking about the messy situation that each and every one of us continue to find ourselves in. I need us to know something that is very real, and it may be kind of a shocker to you. And this has to do with the people who would not consider themselves to be persons of faith. So they wouldn't describe themselves as a Jesus follower or a disciple of Jesus or religious, or they don't go to church. And so the fact of the matter is, the large percentage of persons who would fall into that category, from the outside looking in perspective, would say, I just don't get this Christian thing. It seems like all these people are trying to do is manage their guilt in ways that cost more and are less fun than the ways that I do, right? Any rational person admits that they have experienced that awful, sometimes paralyzing sensation of guilt. It feels gross. Sometimes it incapacitates us. And so any person, Christian or not, will face up to that reality. But the problem with the church today, and this isn't a shaming or a finger pointing because it's me too, right? It's me too. Is that so often we live our lives in a way that treat Jesus as nothing more than a mess manager. We treat him as nothing more than an agent to deal with our guilt. And so in case, you're still trying to get on board with me and see where I'm going. It's not your fault. It's me. It's not you. It's me. We've got this chart that I'd like for you to observe, please. So let's just start up at the top there. So we've made a mess. All of us have. It's our fault. It hurt people. It hurt us. It just is. That's life. Okay? So that happens. And then sometimes we try to remedy it. Sometimes it's messier. Whatever the case may be, maybe you got away with it. The bottom line always results in the product of guilt. We feel bad for what we have done. And there are lots of different reasons as to why. That's another series. But the truth is that we feel guilt. And the human survival mechanism immediately wants to relieve itself from that awful sensation. It has a physiological impact on you. It throws all the chemicals in your brain out of balance. It prevents you from intimacy in your relationships, your friendships, your marriage, your dating relationships. It prevents you from healing the way that you need to from broken relationships. It stands as a huge roadblock in understanding and embracing the crazy love that Jesus has for you. And so we want to get rid of it. And if you'll follow with me again, what Christians do and should do, what is rightly done, is go to Jesus and just let him in on what's going on. Jesus, there's this asparagus soup and it wouldn't go down the toilet and I thought it would, no. Use that as a stupid example for a lot of reality that you and I have to face. Okay? And we ask for forgiveness. And when Jesus forgives, it is done. This is a little bit of a sidebar, but I think it's really important for you to understand, pulling from a lot of the conversations I've been having. When Jesus forgives you, it's finished. That's what he said just before he breathed his last breath on the cross. It's not like you have to go back every single time as if you it didn't stick or it didn't count. But what Jesus does ask for us to do, even though our sins have been covered, they've been washed away by his sacrifice of love for us. They've been separated as far as the east is from the west. Even though that has been done, Jesus wants you to confess. Not because he wants you to feel like a jerk, not because he wants to rub your face in it, but because you've got to get it out. And he wants to be able to transform it into something beautiful. So yes, ask forgiveness. But continuing to go around this cycle, the usual tendency that all of us have after we have been relieved from our guilt is to try harder. So let's say that, one of us is really struggling with pornography on the computer. And it's not because you're an awful person or you're gross or it just is what it is. And you hate it, but you go back to it like there's a magnet there. And you get caught, you feel really bad, sincerely in the bottom of your heart, and you ask forgiveness from God and your spouse or your friends or someone you're dating. And then you try harder. And you try harder, and maybe you get an accountability partner. So someone, when that trigger, whatever it is that's firing, you can call and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this right now. I just need you to talk to me about NASCAR. I don't care. Just distract me, right? That's a good thing to do. It's a really good thing for all types of temptations that you and I face every single day. But then the truth is that sooner or later, you're going to make a mess of it again. Sooner or later, you'll make a mess of it again. And this cycle of behavior turns into a messy merry-go-round. It's a disaster. And it's almost like perpetual. Again and again, we go around. And this is what I mean when I say, oftentimes those who are not followers of Jesus, from the outside perspective looking in, it's so easy for people to think that we have gotten on this insane, messy merry-go-round where nothing ever changes. We make a mess, right? We feel really bad about it. We ask for forgiveness. We try harder. We make a mess again. And maybe it's not the exact same mess, but I could tell you some stories about putting Nana's fried fish in my pockets and it going through the wash, right? It wasn't asparagus soup, but it's the same mess. It's just a different version. Different version of the same mess. It drives me crazy. This is me too, my friends. It's me too. It drives me crazy about myself. And if that is the story that we are portraying to others, even worse than that, if that's what we have believed, that's what it looks like to follow Jesus, then I'm so sorry. Not in a weird rhetorical, well, I'm sorry, but no, I really am. Because it's mostly the fault of people like me for not teaching more effectively. Bad jokes aside, there's just a lot more to it than that. And so, we've walked through some kind of weird concepts and maybe kind of tough to hear. You may be thinking about a few of the things that, I don't know, whatever horse you've hopped on that merry-go-round from where. But I've got really good news, and it's for all of us. And if you're like me, when I sit out there, I'm always the guy that's I believe that, but it's really hard for me to believe that it's for me too. I don't know why, I still struggle with the disconnect. For whatever it's worth, I just want to remind you that, like, this is for you. Jesus invites us to something that's way better than a messy merry-go-round. Jesus, and he invites us to something that he simply called the good life. And so don't take my word for it. What I'd like to do now is to invite you to come with me to God's holy word. And we're going to dive into the book of Galatians. Now, this originally wasn't a book. It was a letter written by a guy named Paul. He used to be called Saul. And it was written to a group of people living in a place called Galatia. And they're dealing with some really, really hard things. They were new Christians, and they were trying to figure out okay, we're in, we've signed up, we're carrying the card, thank you, but what does this really look like? Yes, salvation, love it, forgiveness from sins, needed that, right? Guilt, okay, still struggling, but it's better. But where are we supposed to draw our goals? What are the targets that we are supposed to be identifying and hitting? How do we figure out whether or not we're doing it right, for crying out loud? Because when people get up and talk about the gospel, yes, the gospel, I love the gospel. But so often, when we walk out of an emotionally charged room with some weirdo like me flapping his lips, it's I don't know what they said. That was pretty good, a little long, stupid jokes. I enjoyed it, but what is the gospel? What am I supposed to do? And that's the purpose of this letter. So let's go there, all right? So this is so important, my friends. I think this is so important that we are gonna spend the entire summer in the 5th chapter of the book of Galatians. And this is gonna be the bedrock of our sermon series for the entire summer, the fruit of the Spirit. So here we go. You ready? God's word says this: but the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So my friends, here's the big distinction. If you've tuned out, and trust me, I don't blame you. It's me. It's not you. It may be some of you, but it's mostly me, right? I'm going to draw this distinction. This is the difference between that mess of a merry-go-round, that nightmarish way of trying to follow Jesus, and the way that Jesus is inviting us to follow him. All right? Here's what the merry-go-round is. It's following rules. It's keeping rules. It's saying okay, I get it. We all hate rules, because we kind of like to break them. All of us have at least a little bit of that rebel spirit in us, okay? And if there's a rule there and we don't like it, it's not that we don't like rules in and of itself, because if they weren't there, we wouldn't be able to exercise our rebel nature, right? It would be pointless. No one would care. There wouldn't be any, really good movies. And that's another thing. So anyways, yeah, we all like rules. Also, not only because we like to break them, but because we like to know where we stand. Because we all like to be in good standing. And we all have a different perspective of what that looks like. But it's when you're back in school, if you're still in school, there's a syllabus. It tells you what you gotta do to get a good grade. And it's you either do it or you don't. You wanna know what to do, all right? And so oftentimes, we who try our best to follow Jesus, to be a Christian or religious or whatever, it's we look at all the thou shalt not, and we try so hard to not fall in to the different versions of the same mess that oftentimes is so sticky and thick and dark that it kind of becomes our identity. And on this merry-go-round mess, sometimes you'll have highs, mountaintop experiences, and then for whatever reason, the bottom falls out. And that's usually when you find yourself right on the threshold of making that mess again. And it's awful, because you all know it, right? Like there's that decision time. And it may even be just a fraction of a second. But if you're like me, lots of times, like I'll just go there. And I hate it. And it's just not worth it, man. It's exhausting. We're just not good enough to obey all the rules. And after a while, breaking them, it's just not as fun. And it gets expensive. Let's go over here. Y'all ready for this? Jesus is saying, enough with the rules. Enough with the thou shalt nots. Like when you ask me for forgiveness, I forgave you because I wanted to with a smile on my face, because I love you. Because I've told you in my word, I've got plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future, right? Jesus, when he lived his life here on earth, his heart was full of joy. The pages of the New Testament are littered with that truth. And so what Jesus continued to tell the people that were listening to him was, look, here's the deal. I've got this joy in my heart. It's a joy that's unexplainable. It doesn't make sense. It's relatively immune to all these different scary environmental factors, to broken relationships, to bad days, to job losses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what my desire is for y'all is for you to experience what I'm experiencing. It's too good to not be enjoyed. It's too good to keep bottled up just for me. I want you to have it. I want you to have it. And so I'd like to go now to the Gospel of John as I close. We're going to go to the 15th chapter. And I want you to hear what Jesus says about the first fruit of the Spirit. The first one, the most important one, which is the foundation of everything that we believe as Christians in relation to how we are supposed to live our lives. Kind of important. Here we go. Jesus says, I've told you these things for a purpose, that my joy might become your joy, and your joy could become wholly mature. This is my command. I love this, because Jesus is saying, look, like, okay, I get it. Y'all are like infatuated with rules. So you want a rule, you want a command, you want to know how, like you're in good standing. Here's one that trumps them all, right? Here we go. I'm going to give it to you. This is it. Love one another. And everyone's like, what? That's what he said. It's as simple as that. He's like, oh, you need a little bit? You want a roadmap? You want a playbook? Okay. Love one another the way that I loved you. And that's where he leaves it. And so, my friends, the whole distinction between following a list of rules in order to be a good person or a nice person or to alleviate our guilt or to get a tax write-off, that lifestyle and what Jesus is calling you to, it's all about transformation. Transformation. It's an invitation to get off that merry-go-round, to stop focusing on, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'll never become like my father. I know that I keep living in that habitual sin and that addiction, and I hate it, but I'm going to stop doing that. Focusing towards the negative will usually get you the very thing that you hate. No, Jesus is calling you to become like him, to become more loving and patient and kind and good and gentle, to exercise self-control. And so this is it here, my friends. Last week I said, I want you to come back, I want you to bring people, because we are going to give you a window into the vision for Loft, what God is calling us into in the future. And it's not going to be as much as you probably want. Maybe you don't care, I don't blame you, right? The full thing will be coming in the fall. But I want to invite you in to a conversation that I had just the other day. This gentleman said, well, how are you going to measure success? And what do we count as successful? Like, how do we know that this thing is working? How do we know we're doing it right? And that's this really important question. It's a tough question for people like me because it's so easy to commoditize you, to reduce people to butts that fill up seats, which is antithetical to everything that Jesus has ever stood for. But by the same token, like I love butts and seats. That sounds really inappropriate, right? Talking about numbers here, right? Get your mind out of Nana's toilet. So anyways, because it's gross. Because each person who occupies the space that is a seat, that represents an individual that was made in the image of God. And that's awesome. And so we want to be a community whose doors are like not open wide, but like taking off the hinges, man, right? And it's like have a party in here. It's gonna be awesome. And he was like, I don't think that Dr. Rob's gonna buy that. And I was like, I don't blame you. But I've thought about this. Here's how we measure success: data. When we think about data here at Loft, stories are our best data. And it's all about the fruit of the Spirit. You know, like, I can't wait to welcome more people into our community. But if 1,000 more people came here and I did not hear more stories that sounded like, hey, you know, like, I still don't get this whole church thing. Like, religion's always been, you know, kind of a painful touch point for me. But like, after going and worshiping in that community, like, I just find myself being more patient when I talk to my wife. That's what I'm talking about. That's success. That is quantifiable and qualifiable. Someone says, you know, like, it's really difficult in the energy industry right now, and I manage a lot of employees, and like, I've had to let so many go, and like, I know these people, like, their kids have played with my kids, right? And like, the pressure's on, and I know my triggers and I just find myself being more gentle with all my employees, and I try to really love them through these hard times. That's what I'm talking about. I could go on and on and on. Stories are our best data. And the best way to focus in is on these fruits of the Spirit. Are you becoming more loving, gentle, patient, kind? Are you messing up bad as you're doing that? That's a good thing. It's a process. You're not perfect. The carousel is in Nana's toilet. Right? Thank you. You got it. Merry-go-round, carousel, whatever. So I believe in this so much that I'm going to give you all a few journals. Here you go. You got hot coffee? You better think fast. There you go. All right, Mackenzie, here you go. Watch out. Okay, I want you to start documenting your stories. Good, bad, the ugly. Let's archive one another's stories. This is what it means to follow Jesus. Good, the bad, the ugly. It's a wonderful journey. So thank you for being here. Thank you for making up the community that is Loft. And I need you. You need me. I need you this summer to like really lean into transformation, to get out of here with that broke merry-go-round and like really experience some transformation and actually become the type of people that we've always wanted to be, but we never thought we could. It's possible with Jesus. See y'all later.